Hey folks, we like to have fun here at Select Characters, but I'm going to get serious with you for just a moment. I had some audio problems this week, so the audio coming from me is going to be a little bit rough. And if you stick it out, I appreciate it. If not, we totally understand. We got the problem diagnosed, as you can hear from this audio, and we're tuning it in. So if you skip this week, please come back next week for what will hopefully be a return to form. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to episode 12 of the Select Characters podcast. My name is Sam Yates. I'll be your host, and I've got some friends here with me in a virtual studio behind a secret bookcase in a haunted accounting firm. And I have a question for each of you, and what I'm going to ask is, when in your secret bookcase, what book do you use as the trigger mechanism? And I'm going to go first to, in charge of ectoplasmic P&Ls, I've got Christopher Anderson. What's up, man?
Hi, man. What book would I choose? It's probably something pretentious like Oscar Wilde or something like that. Yeah, I'm going to go with Oscar Wilde.
That's a good one.
Just the entire collection.
Keeping it high class. That's good. That's good. All right, and let's see, moving on, we've got chief in charge of cooking the spooky books. I've got Enrique Cancel, man. What's up?
Not much. I think for me, my hidden switch is under 50 Shades of Mauve.
It's good. Nobody will read it because it's a slight knockoff.
There you go.
Yep.
It's perfect.
It is. And so let's see, moving right on ahead, I've got the guy in charge of the Spookastic Entropy models. I've got Ryan Dildine.
Hey, I think my book, I would find the thinnest book I could. So when other people go in there, they try every single book, never see my book, and now my lair is hidden forever.
That's a good one. The one-page switch.
Yep.
I like it. For me, I was going to go with
Short story.
the last book of the encyclopedias, that index, that is just a listing of all the topics and pages because nobody ever uses it. They just go by the letter to the encyclopedia they want. But it's there, I guess, so they can add a volume or something.
Okay.
All right, so that sounds pretty good. Let's move right along and get into what we've been playing this week. All right, so another good week of video games has passed, and let's talk about what we've been playing.
I'll go first then, I guess. I reinstalled Assassin's Creed Black Flag for the multiplayer, and I was surprised to find that it's still quite active. So yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of that. And it's still really, really good, but I'm getting a bit rusty. I'm not as good as I once was back in the day when the world was still full of promise and I still had hopes and dreams, but it's good.
How close is that to, what was it, Brotherhood, I think? Is it kind of similar?
Yeah, it's the same principle, but it's just better fleshed out. And the maps are a lot better, in my opinion, and the characters that you can play as are quite cool. I mean, you can play as Blackbeard. That's awesome. I like that.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still, fiercely competitive. The deathmatch mode is still the best one, in my opinion. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I'm happy to jump back in some more this week. It's good.
Do you think you got rusty, or do you think that the people who are left are just like the really high skill players that are still playing it?
I think it's both, because I haven't played in about a year. But when I jumped online, I could recognize some of the names of the people I used to play against when I still played an awful lot at launch. So those people have just been chugging on. They just never stopped, and they are ridiculously good.
Yeah. Well, eventually they'll be all that's left, but as long as they stay around, you can always go back and play.
I really hope that at some point Ubisoft is going to bring that multiplayer mode back, because it's just awesome. I love it. None of that cooperative bullshit that you had in Unity. That was, it felt tacked on, and this was just great. It's asymmetrical, it's interesting, it was a fresh idea. I want them to go on with that. It's good. I love it.
Awesome, man.
Let's see, what else? Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm, but we're going to be saving that for later, if I'm to understand that correctly.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, that was it for me.
All right, cool. And let's cruise on over to Enrique.
I actually reloaded up XCOM Enemy Within, and I made a character for all of you fine gentlemen, and we are currently on our way to save the world from the aliens come.
Ooh.
Awesome. Am I dead?
No, actually, you guys are surprisingly still alive and kicking. Although, Ryan, I'm not going to lie, you had a slight accident, so you are now an amputated mech warrior.
Fair enough.
But it's cool. You have like that awesome power fizz, so I mean, it balances out.
Who's the best one out of the four of us?
Sam's got a pretty badass sniper, so I'm not going to lie.
Oh. Look at that.
It's between him and David,
That's
the
right.
Truth to Company. Dude, I forgot how much fun this game is, and it just like the very fact that you can actually just rename your characters, it creates this kind of attachment to it that, man, you really feel lost when one of those characters dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't let me bleed out, man.
Dude, it's awesome, and I'm actually really looking forward to XCOM 2 because a lot of the new mechanics they're introducing. So I just kind of got the urge to go back and play a really fun kind of like turn-based RTS again. So I'm having a blast.
Did you put the Long War mod on it?
No, actually. Well, I had it on there. It's uninstalled currently because I haven't played this in a few months, so I'm trying to like get my feet wet again, figure out what I'm doing. So I'm just doing like classic Iron Man, and once I beat that, I'm going to go back to Long War because Long War added a ton of stuff with, was it new armors, new weapons, new enemies. You actually had a chance to spawn like elite enemies, which were like souped up versions of the regular guys. I mean, it was a beast.
Isn't that the mod that makes everything ridiculously hard?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily ridiculously hard. It just makes everything a little bit more interesting and balanced, which is something that I liked a lot. It fleshes out a lot of like the campaign missions, a lot of the enemies. So instead of just you seeing like the same repetition type of enemies, you actually get a little bit more variety out of them. And same with weapons and everything. Yeah, dude, it's one of those few cases where like, mods completely change the dynamic of the game.
As all good mods tend to do.
Cool, man. And then obviously you've been playing Heroes of the Storm with us because we had a couple good matches.
Oh yeah, so we shall get into that later on.
Let's see. Anything else on top of that?
Not just those two, actually.
Okay. All right, Ryan, how's your week been?
Good. I still, regrettably, because I meant to do this, but I have not finished Spec Ops: The Line, which I want to do soon. But it's okay because, like everyone else, I've been playing Heroes of the Storm, but I discovered Rocket League, which is the greatest thing in the world. I love that game. I'm going to do a video about it, and I'm going to talk about how fantastic it is, because it's great.
The game's pretty great.
It's already been picked up for esports as well.
Good. I hope it is.
Which is quick.
Really?
Yeah, I think ESL has picked it up.
That's impressive.
What's your car of choice right now?
What is it, the Venom?
Yeah, the Venom's good.
Yeah,
the Venom's good. I was rolling Gizmo for a while. I'm pretty sure it's Gizmo, but like the taillights kind of look like teeth, and that started freaking me out. So
I got a skull and bones, I don't know, decal or whatever, but I got a crown topper, like a king's crown, and then a money sign freaking antenna.
Yeah.
So I've been rocking that, and I'm not gonna speak for other people, but I'm pretty sure they're intimidated when they get into the game. So
there's some of those. You can get some of those Cash Money wheels too. They're like green wheels with dollar signs in them.
You gotta have that. No game is complete without that.
Yeah, those are pretty great, man. And I'm pretty sure there's spinners in there somewhere. So that's gonna be a tough choice.
But yeah, I mean, I just have so many good things to say about Rocket League, but I'll save it for the video.
And let's see. As for me, I also played both of those games. Played some Heroes of the Storm. Played some Rocket League, which is a pretty good game. Pretty fun. Played on top of that, played some Caves of Quud, which came out on the 15th for Steam. It's sort of a roguelike. The tile set's pretty cool. It's kind of ASCII, but not. And that game is not doing it for me, and I can't figure out why. So I think I'm going to keep playing it. You'll make a character and you get all these cool mutations, and then it's just sort of roguelike style from there. It might be the open world stuff that turns me off a little bit, but like I said, until I can really put some words as to what it is about that game that's not doing it for me, I'm going to hold off on offering an opinion.
I've not heard about this game actually, so this is all news to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff they want to do is sort of atmospheric stuff, like the world that you're in is sort of post-apocalyptic, like people farm water and stuff and you trade in water, and it's sort of desert but not, and then there's robots and stuff. I haven't got too far in it. On top of that, it's just basic roguelike stuff, number pad to move, level up your character, fight stuff, run around. It seems okay. And the tile set's really nice, but I just don't know. I just don't know what's not doing it.
I find that I have a bit of trouble playing roguelikes. I don't know why, but I just don't like the concept, I guess. It doesn't really click with me.
You just get bored of it, or?
Yeah, and I think it relies a bit too, like most of them rely heavily on that 8-bit era type aesthetic.
Well, worse than that, man. I mean, most of them are just ASCII with a tile set laid on top of it.
Yeah, see, I don't like that. Like in a world where we can have like ridiculously beautiful art styles, a lot of indies, and I understand why they do it, but a lot of indies go for more like old school aesthetic, and I don't really like looking at that. I understand why they do it because it saves you a lot of money as a developer, and a lot of people are nostalgic for that sort of stuff, but it doesn't work for me.
I mean, it depends. Have you guys played Dwarf Fortress at all?
No.
Yeah,
No.
definitely.
The depth of that game is ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, that game is probably like, what is it? It runs in ASCII, doesn't it?
It can, and then there's also tile sets you can lay on top of it. The most common pack that you can get, the Lazy Noob pack, or actually I think it was redone by somebody, Paradax's Errant, something weird like that. But that pack comes with a tile set and a few other utilities that sort of make the game easier to manage.
Nice.
But at least in the case of that game, you couldn't make it with graphics because it's doing so much as it is. Like, the only reason they can squeeze so much content into it, I think, is because of the very reduced art style. Because that game can slow your computer down even running in ASCII. Like, I think once you figure out the game, the most common way to lose is just because you've got too many people and there's too much going on and it just crawls. So, like, that's your in-game scenario more than it is screwing up once you kind of get the hang of things.
Right.
But so, I mean, at least in that case, it's not a stylistic choice. It's like a choice made out of necessity. And I wouldn't say that other roguelikes go quite that far, but I know it does allow you to generate like a ton of content without being too intensive on the computer.
That's a good point, actually. I didn't think about that one.
But yeah, it's one of my favorite genres. I mean, I like a lot of them, but this one's not clicking, and I can't figure out why. So, stay tuned. If I get something, I'll let you know.
Yeah, keep us posted.
All right, so you guys ready to move on and talk about some topics?
Let's do it.
So, in an age where we all play an MMO of some kind and we have to deal with communities of the games that we love, we also have to deal with community managers. And I thought it would be, a nice thing to actually talk about because we spend an enormous amount of time interacting with these people. And when something happens with one of our favorite games, it's usually brought to us by the community managers. And yeah, I don't really have a great angle on this one, but they are a very important part of gaming culture nowadays, so I thought that we should discuss it.
Yeah, it's interesting because as their position, you would think that they would sort of be a consumer advocate, but what they turn out to be is somebody who's hired by the company to dole out the information that the company gives them.
Yeah, they're a mouthpiece for the company that they represent. Well, and they sort of serve to humanize the company itself, which I think is a great idea from the standpoint of the company itself. But when something goes south, usually the community managers get the brunt of the backlash, which is not entirely fair.
No, not exactly. Especially when they're being told to say something and then it turns out that, plans change behind the scenes to things they never had access to.
Yeah.
That might just be part of the job, but it's a weird sort of situation that's where we're at now, that companies need to hire somebody so that they can you interact with the community, because somebody's got to handle all those people.
Yeah. And some of them reach like celebrity status, sometimes just on the game forums, but sometimes on industry-wide stuff. You've got Zahim, who does stuff for
World of Warcraft?
Blizzard. He's one of the World of Warcraft dudes, and pretty much everyone knows him, and I think he's one of the most well-liked community managers there. And there's Deej. He
Destiny?
does stuff for Bungie. Yeah, in Destiny. He's not very well liked, last time I checked.
Well, actually, going back to that, speaking of this topic, I mean, Bungie actually recently hired a new community manager, and it was Cosmo, who was actually one of the moderators for our Destiny on Reddit. And
Oof, that's a tough job.
yeah, but I mean, it's kind of cool to see that like somebody can actually get a full-time job doing that. Just being a voice for the community, which is it's awesome. But
Yeah.
It goes back to what Sam was saying, that look, we're in this weird place where companies need to hire somebody to speak for their developers now. Because if you remember a few weeks ago, one of the lead developers for Destiny pissed off a lot of fans in that Eurogamer interview when he was talking about, I guess, like the pricing model for Destiny, and he kind of just talked down on the audience, saying that you're going to buy what we give you anyway because you're such big fans, and people were really upset about that. And it kind of brings this whole mentality that's like, hey, maybe not everybody on the team is really qualified to, speak in the public because, you end up putting your foot in your mouth like these things.
Yeah, that guy was obviously hired to be a developer, not a public speaker.
He was not hired for his social skills, we'll say that.
Yeah.
He was taken out of context, wasn't he? Because he's sort of known as a joker, or a bit of a joker, so he meant it as a joke.
It could be. It could be that the joke just didn't transcribe well on text, but yeah, I mean, I guess just the context of the interview came off as very pedantic, I guess.
I mean, that's PR 101, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't make the jokes that you have to be a little bit above it to see it as a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, step one, don't be misconstrued in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's kind of funny because I think I'm like dying to remember his name, but he actually started off as a Bungie community manager, and then he eventually somehow found his way going up to like the creative lead for Destiny.
Nothing says you're one of us like hiring someone who is from the community that loves your game.
Yeah,
It's a smart move.
well, it's interesting because I actually got into a discussion with a friend of mine where Destiny's been getting kind of a bad rap in the past few weeks because of all the controversy with the developers and some of their pricing models for DLC and all that. And with Bungie making this effort to hire, one of the moderators from our Destiny and make them a full-time community manager, my friend was, very happy, saying like, oh, this kind of shows a lot of commitment on Bungie's behalf, saying, hey, we're with you guys, we're picking somebody that's, one of you, we hope that this is going to strengthen our bond, yada, yada, yada. And it seems really cool, but there's this kind of cynical part of me that I kind of just can't buy it because I see him as, like you said, he's just a mouthpiece for the company. It's a PR move to hire somebody that's from the community because they'll be more relatable and more likable, so they can still keep doing, head up their ass policies with the game, and they just have somebody more likable to explain it to people now.
Yeah, it just sounds like they just took somebody on, so now they can say that they're so much closer to the community now. Even though they've shown time and time again that they're not entirely, it looks like they're not entirely sure what they're doing, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, it sucks because as a community manager, you kind of relay the information that's given to you, but you have no real say in the game itself. Yeah,
but you do get blamed because you are the person that people talk to.
Yeah, you have to wonder if it should even be like a third party position. Like a neutral arbiter between the community and the company, like if that's what a community manager should be.
Blizzard does that.
Do they? See, that's a smart idea because
they've got greens.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because having somebody who's on the payroll interacting with the community, it seems like by necessity, like when they get their performance review at the end of the year, it's not going to say, how much did you help the community achieve their goals? It's going to say, how much did you help the company achieve its goals?
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Yeah. For the people that don't know who the Greens are, Greens on the Blizzard forums are basically people who have been so helpful and have such a vast amount of knowledge about the game that they're being sort of recognized by Blizzard as the people that you should go to if you've got questions. And they're not representatives of Blizzard, they're just normal people, but they're normal people who've made a name for themselves as just really stand-up people and who like to help others.
But here's the thing: do they get paid by Blizzard whatsoever?
No, they're just normal players.
Okay, so they make no income from this whatsoever.
Nope.
So they're essentially, so Blizzard is essentially using them to curate their community for free.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's kind of weird that they have like people that they pay for this, and they also have like this free workforce for it as well?
Put yourself in Blizzard's shoes for a bit. World of Warcraft is being played by so many people, and a lot of those people frequent the forums, and you can never hire enough community managers to effectively help every single one of them or to respond to every single one of them. The blues are the mouthpiece for the company, whereas the greens just help people with simpler questions.
And yeah, it sounds like those people, just being recognized by Blizzard as someone that people should go to, that seems like enough payment for them from what what you're describing, because I never played World of Warcraft, but it seems like they take that, I guess, show of respect, I guess, as a form of payment.
Yeah, that's true. And they don't apply for this. They get chosen.
Mm-hmm. And they could stop anytime they want. It's not like they're locked into a contract or anything. It does on its face, like I see what you mean, it looks exploitive. And like it's awesome from Blizzard's perspective to have people doing the work that you don't have to pay. But in a way, it's better.
Yeah, they're not making them, They're not forcing them to work for no pay.
And they don't relay news from the developer to the community itself. They are part of that community. So they don't in some ways, they don't know more than a lot of people in the community. They're not a part of the company itself. Yeah. It's just a player.
Do you think that this is a necessary position, a community manager? Do you think it?
Yes. In gaming, definitely, because you need, or like games are most of the time a service, right? Something you release a game and then you support it for an X amount of time, right? And those community managers, they keep people engaged on the forums. They tell people that they're listening to feedback, stuff like that. And at least give the people in the community a sense that their voice is being heard, which is very important for the consumer itself.
Yeah, not only that, but I know in previous episodes we've kind of touched on as a developer how we see a lot of times when an indie developer gets criticized, they lash out on social media and it turns into this big debacle. It's happening with Jim Sterling, it's happened with Total Biscuit, where they'll say something negative about a game, and the developer will take it very personally. Mm-hmm. And there's this difficulty with when you're creating like content in general to detach yourself from your project. So obviously, it's really simple to get offended by criticism of it or get defensive. Mm-hmm. So with the community manager, I think it's a necessity because they act as kind of a neutral third party where like they're not invested in the game from, I guess, a creator standpoint.
Right.
So I guess they can kind of look at both sides of it, and they can see what the developer is going through and try to communicate that to the community. But at the same time, because they're usually members of the community and they're active within it, they can I guess extrapolate more of what the community is actually not necessarily demanding, but what they want from the developer in that sense, so they can act as a little mediator.
Yeah, they're not as emotionally invested in the product as the people who are actually making the product are. Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
I mean, it's a necessity now because, with the whole advent of social media and like we're so close to the developers now. I mean, I can follow, 3 or 4 developers off the top of my head just from a game that I pick because they'll all have Twitter accounts and I can send them messages and, I can see what they're saying on their day-to-day lives. And I think people kind of forget how much they're in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Where developer might just make an offhanded comment that might be playfully anti-Semitic, and somebody might take it offensive, and suddenly it's a whole shit show against the company, and you suddenly realize, God, we need a community manager to kind of like handle this.
PR is an art form, and community managers, they're very well versed in that.
It's got to be a rough job. I mean, because you got to take the heat. When something goes wrong, it's a bummer. And I wonder, do you think that having a community manager is like a deflection thing? And also, do you think that it leads people to be more, how the internet hate machine is, like, do you think that it gets kicked into higher gear because the unwashed masses have somebody who they can reach out to and somebody who they think will hear their voice?
Well, at the very least, I think they're going to find that person as a scapegoat, Well, I just, from my experience, when something happens in the development that the players don't like, it's not necessarily the company. Well, it is the company they go after, but it's also the community manager.
I don't know if you guys remember this guy, but he was a community manager for World of Warcraft. He was called Sarek, and he got so fed up with getting bombarded by, well, anything from just really dumb posts to harassment to actual death threats that he called it quits. He had a mental breakdown. So yeah, it has to be very, very hard to manage a community that is that large. So, you have to sort of have a very thick skin because you'll be dealing with the brunt of internet stupidity for a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, the community manager, it's essentially just another member of the gaming community that the company says, hey, you guys can talk to this person, they are our voice. So it's great when, I guess you have almost an air of authority when you're speaking, you're saying what the devs are telling you, you're giving the community update, you're interacting with them, and it's great when it's working well, but the second something happens and, the dev team leaves you high and dry, or they make a decision that the community doesn't agree with, or they just don't have an answer for you and you have to kind of fumble, you can see the community turning like on a dime and, they will start, persecuting. I think that kind of happened with Deej as well with like the whole Destiny. There's been several times where, updates come out that people are upset with, or there's balancing issues that people don't care for, but Deej doesn't really have anything to say because they haven't given him anything to say, so he's just kind of sitting there on his hands, and the community's going rabid and they're attacking him, saying like Deej is awful, he's terrible, he's not communicating, blah blah blah, and it's really bad because I can see how that can be really stressful.
Is Deej just a community manager? Because I thought that he was involved in making the game as well.
Is he? I was assuming he was just a community manager.
I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to...
How rough is that, though? He can't say, sorry, guys, the developers aren't giving me anything. Like, what does he do? It's so rough.
That actually kind of brings up a question that I had. Do you guys think community managers should be more involved in the actual development of the game because they're so close with the community?
Well, no, because you need that third party that is not emotionally invested in that thing.
I feel like that would lead to them even more trying to spin things out in a certain way to appease the community instead of representing the community. That would be more of a role to keep them under control and keep them quiet than it would be any kind of advocacy. Like, the closer they get to the company, the less of an advocate for the community they are.
Well, I mean, who do you think the community manager really speaks for then? Do they speak for the company or the players?
It's supposed to be both, I think, in theory. Like, they're supposed to be the conduit. Like, they provide the voices from both sides to the other side. Like, they're a filter. in a way.
Yeah, Deej does that, or at least he says that he's doing that, because he's interacting with the community an awful lot, and then he relays it back to the developers.
So they take the stuff from the community and they kind of wash off some of the stupidity and the hate and find like the nugget of information. They give that to the company. They take the stuff from the company and they wash off, the bullshit, and then try to give that to the community. It's like a back and forth thing.
So it's the guy in the middle who's just like, I'm just here to make sure this crap doesn't get out of control.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that speaks to that, I guess the fact that there is a community manager position speaks to the power of the consumer in this day and age, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because you need to stop people from getting out of control, and you need to keep them engaged with your product and all this stuff. And it seems like a really elegant sort of art to balance those things.
So would you say, like, I guess the community manager acts almost as an anchor for the development studio?
I don't know if I'd say anchor. Anchor in what way?
Well, I mean, like you said, it's just, the consumer voice is so powerful nowadays because of all the resources available. So in a way, I mean, it's really easy for, the developers to just kind of like keep throwing out content that they think is going to be received well. And when it doesn't, they just, they won't necessarily listen, like we've seen happen a few times. Do you think the community manager is kind of almost instrumental in keeping the developers grounded to a degree?
I don't think he has that much influence over the dev team. So on one hand, he's the guy that releases the press things to the general public, and he relays messages from the community back to the developers. And I think that is the extent of his job.
And even outside of all the spend stuff, at least taking that stuff off of the plate of the people who are doing the actual programming and stuff is a good thing, because that means they can do their job more instead of having to deal with all that stuff.
All right, so I was reading recently in a book called Extra Lives, Why Video Games Matter. It's by a guy named Tom Bissell. This is a book I've read a couple times, and there's a chapter that stands out to me whenever I read it, and I have it bookmarked to hell. But in this chapter, he talks about why games aren't really viewed as seriously as other medium like TV, film, theater, literature. Games are just kind of scoffed at when put in the discussion with those other things. And so I kind of want to talk to you guys about why that's the case with people outside of games as well as inside of games. And there's a couple quotes that I want to read so people kind of know what he's getting at in the chapter. So in the chapter, Bissell says, well, he talks about Left 4 Dead and how Left 4 Dead doesn't necessarily have that traditional narrative. There's no clear-cut story, and he talks about his experience in the found narratives from going through the levels. These stories with his friends emerge about how, one survivor was left and they went back and were able to rescue everybody else, and they just barely passed the level, and that's now the story that their group holds. And he summarizes it in this quote, which is, "The end of the game, however it turns out, will feel epic to no one who did not take part in it. But those who did take part will feel as though they have marched together through the gauntlet of the damned." And then he has he goes on a little bit more about Left 4 Dead, and he closes the chapter with this quote. After talking to some people who felt like Left 4 Dead didn't offer enough, they were so used to that narrative experience of a traditionally narrative game. And this is what he had to say about it. "The overly caloric narrative content of so many games had caused these gentlemen to feel undernourished by the different narrative experience offered by Left 4 Dead. They, like the games they presumably loved, had become aesthetically obese. I then realized I was contrasting my aesthetic sensitivity to that of some teenagers about a game that concerns itself with shooting as many zombies as possible. It is moments like this that can make it so dispiritingly difficult to care about video games." So, what I really want to get at is, why do even gamers feel like at the end of the day it's just a video game, when we're able to talk, we're able to have serious conversations about the implications of movies and literature and their place in society and its effect on society? But when it comes to games, it seems like a lot of people, it turns into, well, whatever, it's a video game, man, just play it. So I just want to know your guys' thoughts on that.
Because that's what it is. I mean, like, that's the vocabulary term that we've assigned to it, is a video game. That's what you want. Like, you want, like, the old wooden game where you twist the knobs on the side and try and roll the ball to the end without getting caught in the holes. What you want is a hyper digital expansive version of that. Just a quick repetition, skill gain sort of process. And video games aren't ready to be asked more of than that, than to be a super futuristic bop it. That's what video games are.
I disagree. I really do. When you look at books, in essence, it's just paper with words on it. But what you find within those pages can make you think about who you are, what your place in life is, how you think about certain things. And I think that games are starting to get to a point where they are doing that as well, and they become more than just the medium that they are. For instance, take BioShock Infinite, right? When I finished that game, I was so impressed by the way the story was told, and I was so interested with, you know, the plot devices that they used to make their points. I was talking about that game with other people for weeks after that, and I wasn't talking about the game and its mechanics. I was talking about the effect the whole product had on me, and in a certain way, the story had sort of changed my view on certain things. So I think that games can definitely transcend the futuristic bop hit that you so affectionately called it.
That's an outlier. And what I'm saying is, until games are able to come to grasp with sort of telling those stories and being those things, and BioShock Infinite isn't anything spectacular story-wise. It's just like a well-told story with a sort of little twist at the end. It's not like setting the world on fire, I don't think.
How dare you, sir?
And, well, I mean, eventually video games will get there. I'm not saying, and steps like that are necessary to kind of get to that goal, but until games are able to represent themselves in a way that is as fully fleshed out as, you know, the other forms of media out there, they're still going to be just games.
What would it take, in your eyes, for that to occur?
Yeah, what would it take to escape like that triviality?
You need something where the interaction becomes a crucial part of the story that you're telling.
Interaction of player and narrative, or mechanics and narrative?
Yeah, I feel like we've got the mechanics thing down pretty well, but it's telling an interesting story that means something and sort of people relate to their lives and internalize and all that kind of thing that I just haven't seen with video games yet. But I see how we're starting to take those first few stutter steps in that direction. Like, we're starting to have impactful emotional experiences, but right now the good ones are outliers.
What's your reaction to like the backlash that Mass Effect 3 had?
What, with the ending being bad and stuff? Or the fact that all the endings were the same?
We'll take a step back, not with the endings being bad, but just with how much people had invested in the series that they actually had such a negative response to it.
But that's just the story of a video game? I don't know, man. Like, it's not... It's because you've been... It's like if you were reading a book and then the last chapter was ripped out or something like that. Like, it's the same way that if I was, like, giving you media over a span of time and you just started enjoying it, that doesn't mean that video games now have this sort of large, overarching whatever.
No, the difference between books and video games is that the player character, the character that you play within the games, even though they are not you, they've got a name and they've got their own personality and stuff, you will always refer to that character as you. It's you doing the actions, you making the choices, you having an effect on the game world and on the story. Even if it's a very linear experience, you still do enough to push the story forward. And I think that is one of the reasons why people were so disappointed in the ending for Mass Effect, because they have been in that universe for so long, and the payoff wasn't what they expected it to be. But they took it so seriously because they were really emotionally invested in this universe and these characters that they spent so much time with. It transcended what the game was.
I think the answer to Ryan's question is kind of like, it's somewhere in like a middle ground between what Sam's point of view is, where, you know, we are taking those steps and you are seeing like the starts of these games that are kind of creating these amazing narratives. But I wouldn't say necessarily that they're outliers, but they're not as big in the public eye as we still do have a huge chunk of games that are literally just games. You know, they're just something for us to sit down and kill a few hours on, whether it be a multiplayer match on Call of Duty, whether it be just the next random zombie game coming out. You know, they're not really concerned with telling a story or creating any kind of, I guess, evoking any kind of emotional feeling. They're just...
Yeah. They're just there for entertainment.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's just now within the last decade that gaming has become so ubiquitous that we're still seeing a lot of games that are trying to cater to as many people as possible, and you can't do that by providing like these very specific overarching like narratives. You have to do it by applying to the lowest common denominator.
And he's right. I mean, like, Tom Bissell, the guy who wrote that book, is right that is like the Left 4 Dead thing. That's the story that video games are going to tell that's going to be interesting and propel them to a new level. Because what you see, the best stories in video games can be told somewhere else, because all they're doing is taking these stories from movies and books and TV and just shoehorning them into a video game without taking advantage of any of the unique features of actually being like a controlling observer of that action.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I read an article while working on another project that the author made a good point, saying if they take things from film and literature and you apply that to games, then games will never go beyond what film and literature can. If you're using the tools, their tool set, you're never going to be able to create anything better than that. And I think where games, have an advantage, I guess, if that's the right word, in that area, is books and movies don't necessarily have a set of mechanics that has to mesh with the narrative. And I think, I don't know, I'm a fan of narrative games, but I really think for games to really advance and get out of this trivial view that we have of them, it's got to come from a game that has a fantastic mesh of a good narrative and a great set of mechanics that really brings the player to another level of engagement.
You have to let go of that cage of like, this is the story we want to tell, and then, this is the video game we're going to build around it. And it has to be that, like, you have to let go of the control if you want to tell a story. You just have to make a story generator, basically. And that's the emergent gameplay stuff. That's where video games will be able to shine.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that kind of ties back directly to what the author was talking about with the Left 4 Dead. Because Left 4 Dead is a game that, like, when you look at it at a macro level, it doesn't have a narrative whatsoever. It's just get from point A to point B with all these zombies in between. But because it gives you such a loose framework, you as the audience / player / participant, you create your own, your own narrative. So
narratives.
And he spoke about how he had a session where 3 of them reached a checkpoint, 1 of them was still left behind, so they went back, they rescued their fallen party member, and they fought through the hordes and made it to the finale, and that became their unique story, and that became something very personal to them. And Ryan, I'm sure you can relate to this, but DayZ, it's another game where there's no narrative in the game whatsoever, but there's this very loose framework of things that you can interact with, where as a player, when you start engaging in it, you create your own story. And I think when we start seeing more games kind of embracing that, and we see more, I guess, emergent narrative coming out, that's when we'll start seeing games actually taking a step beyond like that traditional media.
Yeah, I think, with the DayZ comment you made, that's the first game I really felt like I was having experiences, like an actual experience, rather than just participating in a game. When take any story you want from that game, like that you remember, like your heart's beating, your adrenaline's going, your hands are shaking, like that's, to me, I just feel like that's more than just taking part in the game. You're experiencing something. And I think that is where games, that's how they're going to get to the next level, because the best movies make you a part of the experience. In a really good horror film, you're terrified. In a really good sad story, you're sad with the characters or for the characters. And if you're in a game and something is supposed to be really intense and you're getting all the emotions from that, I think that's an example of, I think, games, they're starting to knock on that door.
Yeah, I agree. Like, player agency is key here, obviously.
Yeah.
It's player agency and emergent narratives and gameplay, which is something that is pretty much unique to video games.
Oh, it's got to be.
And they are used to great effect. And like I said, you refer to your player character as you. It's you doing those things. And as such, that helps you get immersed into it and makes the world feel more real. I don't... with quite a few games that I've played... Even stuff like Battlefield 3, in one instance, it didn't feel like just a video game. It felt like an actual experience that affected me on an emotional level, and that is unique to video games. So I don't think that video games are just video games. In quite a few instances, it's not a rare thing that they're more than just a video game.
And if what's unique about video games is the player agency thing, then why not give them story agency as well? Like, those two concepts are at odds. You control this person, you can do whatever you want, but only along these measured paths and only along the story that we're going to give you. Like, obviously that falls short, because then the story and the gameplay are very separate from square one.
But I think we're also kind of limited by the technology available.
Obviously, and it's a limited thing right now.
But it's the same kind of limitation you find in movies and books. You're just going through the experience that they give you. Like, you're very limited. Even a choose your own adventure book, you're still limited to the constraints they're giving you within the story.
But video games have the potential to sort of rise above that.
Yes, they do. They are the only form of media that actually has that, I guess, that keyhole that'll open that door.
That's like the entire point. Like I'm getting at is this medium has so much potential, but it's, like I said, it's scoffed at.
It's scoffed at because it's not the shining example that makes all this work hasn't propagated enough out through the populace to make it worth it. And you're still calling them games. Like, so basically what we think of games is something that you just kind of play. Like, you gradually gain skill. That's where the payoff is. It's got nothing to do with a huge overarching story. The payoff is playing this game, getting a little better at this game, getting a little better at this game, and then moving on to the next game.
I mean, do you think in that case the problem just lies in like the lexicon that we're using, that we just need to come up with another name for it now?
That's part of it, but I like that. Like, what I want is the super futuristic version of like lawn darts, you know? Like, I like just that gradual sort of mental process of figuring out what this is, what the hell's going on, getting a little better at it, gaining skill at it. That's my favorite part about video games. And so I'm cool with that. But in order to reach, and that's what video games have been for so long, and that's what they were originally, that it's hard to break away from that into channeling all of their unique aspects into something that can't be done anywhere else.
But it's already doing stuff that's not being done anywhere else.
Video games? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know what? I mean, to go on a bit of a tangent, in video games, we're also reaching to the point where they're actually being looked at under a microscope, like from different points of view. You know, it's no longer just looking at it as just, like you said, a futuristic lawn darts. You know, we have critiques looking at, you know, the sexual personifications of women in the game, how, you know, like misogynism and femininity are taken into account in games. We have like the issues of racism. Like, you know, we have these real big social issues that are suddenly being applied to the concept of video games. So, I mean, that's, I think, a huge step in a telling sign of where it's heading.
Even this podcast, we talk about the implications video games have on our lives and the people in our culture as a whole. So it's more than just the thing that you jam in your console and play for a couple of hours. We talk about video games at least for about 2 or 3 hours every week on a higher level than, games are quite cool, aren't they? So apparently they mean a lot more to us than just bits of entertainment.
That's because these steps are necessary. These steps are still sort of kludgy and unwieldy, and like applying analysis and stuff like that is still not exactly what it's eventually going to be. But you're already seeing people start to develop best practices and people being aware of the social issues around video games and stuff like that. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
that's the next step. Like, you go from people being afraid that they're about to be hit by a train when they watch a movie to like, you know, eventually analyzing overall grander themes, and it becomes more than just that simplistic form of entertainment. We're just in the infant part of that stage right now.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's just a generational thing, because pretty much every other medium out there, I mean, when novels were when they were first, I guess, coming out, that's the right term, but when they were first being read, it was like by housewives who people were like, oh, they have nothing better to do than read a novel. And now, you know, literature in novels is a huge thing, and movies were the same way, and TV was the same way. People thought it was just mindless entertainment, and now way later we see clearly that it's not just trivial.
And you had books that had to be written as if it was like somebody found a stack of letters. Like, you had a frame story because people had to ground it in reality in this weird way because they couldn't abstract concepts. But then somehow we all sort of realized, hey, we can make this mental leap and we can think about this in a different way. And I think something like that might be about to happen with video games.
Well, you're starting to see it with esports now, I think. Like, take, for instance, a traditional athlete, right? He's really good at a sport, but that sport is not just a sport. It's something that encompasses his entire life. And you could argue that sport is a game as well. Yeah. And now you get a lot of people who are professional gamers who play games for a living, who play games at tournaments. And that is something that's taken over their entire life as well. So it's not just something that you do for entertainment. It's a legitimate career choice nowadays as well.
That's definitely another facet. There's a lot going on to make games not be the sort of offhanded, just little silly fun thing. I don't see how any of it has come to fruition yet. The potential is almost certainly there, yeah. And what we're reaching for is something like, I can't tell you, all right, this is what video games need to do, because if I had thought of it, I'd have already done it. And that's up to people who are like a lot smarter than me and sort of understand things on a way deeper level than I ever will.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I see on Reddit a lot people saying, you know, addressing a game, they will say, I felt something from this game that I'd never felt before. And I suppose if games keep giving people that kind of response, they're going to keep advancing as a medium.
Yeah, and then as that keeps happening, they keep gaining respect, and as they gain respect, like, more people become sort of able to approach them in interesting ways. And as the tools continue to develop, it's more difficult to make a video game than it is anything else as well. So there could be an untapped part of the populace with amazing ideas who just can't express it because making a video game is way harder than sitting down and writing something.
So we're in a bit of a transitional period now, it seems.
It seems that way, yeah. And I guess you could say that the tools are getting easier because maybe that has something to do with such a rise of indie games. It's easier to make a video game now than it ever was before. Yeah. And so you're seeing more people coming on with these really fascinating creative ideas and expanding the whole medium. It's like the kind of the Wild West out there right now, and there's this huge gold rush to find these interesting and creative ideas, and now that there's more people on it, there's a greater probability that we'll get there.
Yeah, well, it's true. That is, and just as a little side note, that is true for most art forms, because it's never been easier for normal people to make music or films, or you know what I mean? It's never been easier to make games or make music or make videos than it is now. Yeah, you've got a point there. It is kind of the Wild West now.
Yeah, I think every form of media has gone through its growing pains. I think we're just now kind of seeing the advent of video games coming into their own.
Yeah, because I think we're starting to show less growing pains, not just as a medium, but as a community that supports that medium as well. Because we're starting to gain more legitimacy, and more people nowadays are playing games. Old and young, women, men, kids, anyone.
And looking at them from a critical and sort of analytical viewpoint, which is, I guess, one of the most important factors towards making them heavier, I guess, like getting away from the lightning of video games.
The implications games have on us are becoming increasingly more important. And give it a couple of years, maybe those things are as important as the actual games themselves. Who knows? But I've had more than enough experiences with video games that transcended just me being entertained by it. But maybe that's me, or just easily entertained. Or maybe I don't really know what it feels like to be entertained, and I was like...
Well, I mean, you gotta also fix the curmudgeons like me who are just coming to it to play it.
Right, yeah. I don't do that. Well, why I was drawn into games as a kid was because I could go on all these great adventures that I couldn't do in real life. And that's what keeps me coming back to it. Even competitive online stuff. It makes me feel something. It makes me feel more than just entertained. I know that is very vague, but it just makes me feel stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, exactly. It's an important part of my life now.
I think there's a place for games that are just games. And maybe, like we were talking about earlier, maybe games isn't the right term for games that aren't just games, if that makes sense.
Interactive experiences.
Yeah, maybe another term needs to be invented. I don't know. It's interesting because, I mean, like I said, just like in film, there's a place for lighthearted films, there's a place for lighthearted games. We could go on for a while about that topic.
It's a brave new world, ladies and gents.
Something I actually want to talk about is take a little bit of a look at DLC. We've had a lot of games releasing the past few months that have taken really different approaches to DLC. We had Evolve come out earlier this summer that offered the game with, I guess they said they're going to be releasing free maps to everybody. However, people will need to buy season passes and the individual characters separately, which is another game that their DLC model is completely different, where they do have a season pass. However, they've been releasing periodic free DLC, which includes quests, items, armor, different skins for characters. Monster Hunter is a game that I love, and Capcom is amazing with their DLC, where every first Friday of the month, they release free DLC, which is new quests, new themed armors and stuff like that. Then you have like things like Call of Duty, which is the standard map packs. So you see a lot of these different ways to handle DLC now, and I'm kind of just wondering, how do you think one of these methods is more approachable than the other, or more successful? I mean, what do you guys think?
The way The Witcher did it was really good, or the way they are doing it now is really, really good. They give out small pieces of easily digestible DLC, like one mission or, more cards or different cards for your Gwent deck or something like that. Something other developers might make you charge for or charge you for, and they just give it out for free and leave the really big stuff for the season pass stuff, which I think is refreshing and really honest. Like, we didn't put as much hours into this little piece of DLC or a new skin or something. You can have that for free while you wait for the big stuff that we're working on. I think that is great.
But see, it's funny because there's people that are in a completely opposite argument where they would say that you should charge for things like all the cosmetic things that don't have any impact on the game, and bigger things like story additions and components shouldn't be charged as extra DLC. They should be included with the game.
Well, in free-to-play stuff, yeah. That's a decent way to make money.
There's a right and a wrong pricing model for that stuff, though.
Yeah, it depends on the price. Like if you charge $3 or $4 or euros or your regional equivalent for just a skin, that's a bit much, isn't it?
It's the horse armor thing all over again.
Oh God!
It's never gonna die.
And as a concept, I think that DLC is really great. I know that there's a lot of people who would tell you it's awful, but it's cool that a game will come out and they keep working on it and they keep making new things for it. It's just a smaller size than an actual big, what used to be an expansion. I haven't seen an expansion in years. I don't think they exist anymore.
I mean, not only that, but it gives the developers something to keep working on afterwards, because it's not like you finish the game and then they're cut loose. You know, they're kept on to keep producing content for the game.
Yeah, because otherwise they would be cut loose. So, people like artists and stuff or sound engineers, once the game is done, they're not really needed anymore. So when a company makes DLC, they've got a reason to stay on and keep on working on it.
And that's a good thing.
It is. Of course it's a good thing. It means more jobs.
And you might get something cool for the game you like 5 or 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. But the problem is that whole concept that at its core is pretty cool for us and for the people who work on the games has sort of been monetized to a degree that makes it just feel bad. Like when you're paying for all these tiny little DLCs that don't really add anything or provide that much value, it's just a huge bummer because you can't feel like your game is content complete unless you shell out an amount of money for something that you don't feel is worth it.
Yeah, it's the nickel and dime stuff that annoys me most of the time.
I think, I don't know, for me, I don't want to be locked out of, I don't know if content's the right word, but I don't want to be locked out of the story or the game world. I'm fine with being locked out of cosmetic stuff, but I don't know, I feel like if developers are going to create something new to add on to their game, it needs to be available to everyone there, or you're alienating people who originally bought your game. You're alienating them from part of the experience that I would assume that they thought they paid for when they first got it.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. The first Dragon Age, was it Dragon Age Origins? They had a character in your camp that was just there to tell you about this awesome new DLC that you can buy now.
Oh God, yeah, you're right. It was that merchant, right?
Yes. Oh, that was terrible. It's the way that they offer DLC sometimes as well. Like, most recent for me, The Crew, right? I start up the game and immediately there's a pop-up like, see this really, really fucking awesome car? You cannot buy it with in-game currency. You can buy it with DLC stuff. Yay. I'm like, really? I haven't even played the game yet.
See, that's the problem. It's that there's got to be a time gap there, and you're absolutely right. People get real suspicious when the DLC comes out too fast. Because then you're like, I kind of feel like you had this already.
Yeah.
I know that was a huge issue of contention with Mass Effect 3 and like the Prothean?
Oh yeah, that.
Yep.
Where, like, they swore up and down, like, hey, like, this, we started working this, after the fact, after the game was completed, we just happened to finish it early, so we're offering it for pre-orders, blah, blah, blah. And, but they were saying that, that character wasn't necessary, but when you played with that character, you realized that there was a lot of scripted events in the game solely based on whether or not the character was in the party.
How was he not relevant? He was a Prothean!
It brought this argument where, like, people were arguing, it's like, hey, this is, like, you're basically gouging the game for DLC right at this point. Like, it felt like you took something that was already in there and sold it as a separate item.
And there is a line there, and it's sort of those you'll know it when you see it kind of things, where like you can tell that DLC is designed to make a profit and that it's more for them than it is for you as a player.
Yeah.
And that stuff's a huge bummer.
I guess I kind of want to break these down a little bit more because like I said, we've had so many varied examples of approaches to DLC, so I want to start with Evolve, for example. Evolve was a game that, when it came out, it had, the 4 characters and a couple different map packs, and I think it had, 2 monsters available, and 2K and Turtle Rock are basically releasing all map packs for free, so you'll be able to play on every single map pack with everybody. However, they're charging for any extra characters and extra monsters, and people were upset at one point because I think the season pass didn't actually cover a lot of the content that came out afterwards.
Doesn't that game have a second season pass now?
It does, yes.
Why?
See, that's the thing. I shouldn't have to figure anything out when it comes to buying DLC. If you want to have a one-time buy this and you get everything purchased, that's cool, man. That's the thing I'm going to buy so that I don't have to think about anything. Yeah. Don't hold some stuff away from that. That's a huge bummer.
Yeah, exactly. And in the case of Evolve, that was a $60 free-to-play game, if you know what I mean. Like, it had the free-to-play model, but it charged you a pretty exorbitant amount of money for entry. I didn't get that. It was so unnecessary, and and the developer was trying to justify it all the time, but it was so flimsy. It was so anti-consumer.
And obviously you're right. I mean, just look at the player counts and you can clearly see.
Oh yeah, that game flopped as fuck.
So that's not the way to do it. Like people will know when you're doing shit like that and they won't like it. And that game might be fine. I mean, the only time I played it was in the demo weekends and stuff. It seemed like it was pretty fun, but I'm not trying to spend $60 and then spend a ton of money on top of that to be able to play the game.
Evolve is an example of a game that did DLC terribly. What game do you guys think would be the best example of how to do DLC right?
I think The Witcher is one of the best examples I can think of right now, because that one's just really cool with DLC.
It's nice little tidbits and they're free, which is really great.
Yeah.
But I would say that they're free because they're not really adding too much.
Well, it had a couple of missions that were decently lengthy.
Like a mission or a suit of armor. You know, that stuff is cool and that stuff should be free. That's a good model for them. But like large chunks of content that I'm willing to pay for. I think Skyrim, the 2 ones, and Skyrim, the vampire one, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, it was a Hearthfire, and what was the other one?
Hearthfire was the really small one. That was the one that was just, it let you build a house and that was it.
Yay, just what I needed.
Which was the one with the vampires, the Dawn?
Yeah, Dawnguard. It was Dawnguard, and then,
See, that one was alright. I think that's the way I like to see DLC, if it's not just give me free stuff, because who's going to complain about free stuff?
Yeah. Nobody.
But, I mean, if you give me a sizable chunk of content and I can tell that, you know, the game came out and you thought it was awesome and you wanted to make more stuff for it, then great. And that, what I thought was cool about that was they even had, after they finished that game, they had people keep working on stuff just to make whatever the hell they wanted. Mm-hmm. And then they grabbed the ideas that they liked the most and then made DLC off of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, just set the developers loose and then see what you get. I mean, DLC should be an extra interesting content pack. The game should exist okay, stand on its own legs without it.
Has to feel complete without any of the added stuff.
So do you think that, I guess, purchasable DLC should be limited to just...
the optional stuff that you can buy?
Yeah.
I mean.
Dishonored DLC was pretty amazing.
Oh, the Witches of Brickmore?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah.
And some of the most legendary DLC for BioShock was the Minerva's Den. See, that's a fantastic piece of content, and that's really great DLC.
A Burial at Sea was amazing as well. That was really good.
So I think those are all examples of good DLC. It doesn't feel like a cash-in, and it feels like it's something extra, and, you know, you're willing to spend a little money for it. I only say those are better because those are the situations where everybody wins. You know, we win, they get a little money, everybody's happy.
I've been trying to think of the best way I've seen a game do it, and I actually think Counter-Strike has a really interesting DLC model, I guess, because, I mean, they obviously do the skins and that kind of thing, but they do operations that you can buy for like $6 or $7 or whatever it is, and all of the content added, the people who didn't buy the operation aren't locked out of it. So if you did not buy the operation, you can play all the new maps and you can get every skin from the operation through the market if you really want it. You know, you can just go and buy it. But
what kind of stuff is the operations? What like when I spend $6, what's up with that?
Everybody gets new maps, new skins, but you get a bunch of missions. It's kind of like with the latest operation, there's probably 50 missions. They're not super complex or anything. It's, for example, you know, get 50 scout kills in deathmatch.
Oh wow, that's exactly like that thing they just released for Team Fortress then.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because, like I said, no one's locked out of any of the content. You're just locked out of the missions, and really, you can do any of those missions on your own, except for a couple of them. Like if you want to go get 50 scout kills in deathmatch, you can go do that on your own.
You pay for the tracker.
Yeah, you pay for the tracker, you pay for the little freaking emblem on your profile picture that doesn't really do anything. It just says you did all of it, you know?
Valve's double dipping, like basically offering the same type of content for both games.
It seems that way. I mean, I imagine they moved it over because it's successful, but I liked it. I liked the gunmetal update. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody really feels like they're ripping you off by it doing that, you know?
And especially in those games, like, there's a chance that you're going to get a drop that you can sell for $6, and then you just washed out. Like, boom.
And then use that $6 to buy more skins.
But it's cool. It's what I think is cool is because I don't think you get drops if you didn't buy the operation. I don't think you can get drops from that operation. I'm not sure on that. I may be totally wrong.
Well, the gunmetal update is that way. Because you have to have the tracker so that it knows when to give you the drops. I imagine it's probably close to the same.
The cool thing is, if you didn't buy the DLC, the chances are they're going to get some sort of money from you because you want the new skin. So you're going to go in the market and buy skins anyways. So it's like they're kind of making you buy the DLC when, not making you, but they really make you want to buy the DLC even when you don't buy the DLC, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. And if you don't care about that stuff, you don't have to engage with it. So seems like a good practice.
What about Capcom's approach? Because they just recently announced that for Street Fighter V, all the DLC they're going to be offering can actually be unlocked in-game.
Yeah, it's good, but it makes you wonder how big of a grind that is going to be.
I'm sure it'll be like hugely inconvenient.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? A lot of the time they see it, like 5,000 hours, they write, oh, you can unlock it in the game. Like it's exactly the same thing to them as something you have to spend 2 hours on. It's just a good tagline to throw in there. I don't think they actually like run the numbers on how long it takes, or it's in their best interest to make it longer, but say that you can unlock it in game.
Yeah, they're going to skew the gameplay just enough to make it very, very enticing to shell out a bit of money to get the content quicker instead of grinding for it, which is what happens in Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone and stuff.
Well, because at that point, you're not even paying for the content, you're paying for the convenience.
At least it's something. There is somebody out there who their time value calculation is different, that 5,000 hours is more important to them than $10. Those people exist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I am not one of them, and I think it's just dumb to even include it. But, if you're going to make some people happy by putting it in there, then I guess why not? But I guess that's a more common DLC thing. You see that cropping up more and more.
It just seems a little disingenuous. If you're going to make it as inconvenient as possible for the players to unlock this like in-game, you might as well just not offer it.
Yeah. In regards to free-to-play games and stuff, like those games are already free. So, yeah, the grind is very, very long to get more content, but, the base game is free.
That's understandable, but now when they charge a full retail price for the game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, which one was that game? It came out a couple of years ago. Killer Instinct. That one gave you like 1 or 2 characters for free.
Yep.
And you could buy the characters that you wanted. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was sort of fair. You don't have to pay for what you don't want. You just pay what you like.
Especially for a fighting game where people master 1 or 2 characters. Yeah. You could be done right off the bat. Just get the 2 you like.
Exactly.
That's a consumer-friendly way to do it. I agree.
I would like to see proper expansions make their return, because I really like those, because that usually added 40 or 50 hours to the game that you already really liked, and at their own like physical box and stuff. I might be a bit nostalgic, but I like that.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, and going back to what you were talking about Skyrim, I mean, that's why Dragonborn and Dawnguard were so successful, because they were like full-length expansions to the game.
Yeah, they don't do that often enough anymore.
No, they don't.
Which is why I'm so excited for the Witcher stuff, because they promised that it's going to be like 40 hours combined, which is fucking great. Cool.
That's a good point. What's the last game you've actually played that had like a full-length expansion?
Neverwinter Nights.
It's probably Warcraft 3 with the Frozen Throne.
That was a good expansion.
Oh, man, that was a killer expansion. It was really good.
But it's been a while.
It seems like the concept of like the expansions are gone, and in favor of just like these really short segmented DLCs.
Yeah. Slightly cheaper, but they're also more numerous. So in the end, you're out of pocket more money.
And I guess you could say if they rolled all that stuff together, it might equal the content of an expansion, but it's sort of way less exciting when it comes as a drip feed.
Yeah.
Like I've actually been playing Batman Arkham Knight, and they just released like the Batgirl DLC, and it's kind of cool because it acts like a prequel, but at the same time, you realize that it's just a really short mini campaign with just that one character.
Yeah, I heard it really falls short.
And it does, and it almost comes off like it's gonna be like a little mini expansion, but what you end up getting, it's almost like this could have just been a side mission within the game.
Yeah, that's too bad. It wasn't developed by Rocksteady, was it? It was developed by Warner Brothers.
No, I believe it was outsourced.
Yeah, it was developed by one of Warner Brothers' studios, which, I don't know, call me a cynic, but that explains a whole lot.
Why, did it have third act problems?
Warner Brothers has problems with, everything game related. They are so anti-consumer.
That's true. But they're not, it's not their main business, so maybe they'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, long story short, more expansions.
I agree. True story. All right, so this week we all played Heroes of the Storm in our little play-along book club gaming adventure. And how did that go for everybody?
It was a very good week.
Yeah, it was awesome, actually.
Yeah, I love Heroes of the Storm.
It was good.
It was good. Maybe we could kind of break it down. Maybe we'll start with sort of pre-game and then during game and then post. Maybe kind of talk about our thoughts, form them up that way.
Sure.
As far as before the game, downloading it, installing it, and getting a match, how was all that for you guys?
Easy.
Yeah. Matchmaking's easy.
For the most part, relatively easy.
Oh, yeah, because you had that problem. What was it? What did the game tell you?
It said like initial like cannot start game until finishes initializing.
yeah.
It was a weird
Was
bug
it?
that apparently occurs very often for players where, for whatever reason, the game is just stuck in initializing mode and nothing.
Oh,
will fix
fucking Blizzard. That game is dead.
That was a huge bummer because we wanted to play a match. We still got through it somehow, but that was a bummer.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll say this. I mean, like the thing about Blizzard games is like they work seamlessly, but when they break, they
crash and burn.
Oh, God.
break.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah, it's such a cool game.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, like the game is actually really well put together in terms of like the ease of access. Downloading it's really easy, especially now with the Blizzard launcher. I mean, it's right there. You can hit launch; it'll take you to the main menu. I mean, and it's very easily laid out. You know where you need to go for training, for adding party, and I love that little feature where on the right hand side you actually see players who are currently.
Yeah, that's a good
cool.
one.
That was neat. Did you feel like they hid the quit game button?
No, that was like right there. No, wait, you mean like quit game, like
quit,
leaving?
quit. And it's like I thought it was hidden. It's like down in the bottom right hand corner behind the gear.
I think it was, and I think that might have been intentional, just because of I guess the nature of MOBAs, where it's very easy and for players to just kind of like quit the game and leave their team high and dry when things aren't going well.
Oh, there's a penalty for that now, though. If you leave, you can't do quick matches or Hero League stuff.
Oh.
You have to do one AI game before you can jump back into the quick match queue, which I thought was
Nice.
pretty good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Got to work it off.
So one of you guys plays Dota. I think Ryan was the one who played a shit ton of Dota.
No, League.
Oh, League. Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
What?
I used to play Dota.
All right, so we've got one person who played League, one who played Dota. So how does those games compare to Heroes of the Storm?
Well, I think Heroes of the Storm, their launcher is infinitely better, or their client.
By far.
League's client is, yeah. But as far as gameplay, I felt like obviously it's much faster, and I felt like it was chaotic, but in a structured way. And you had to make, I think you have to make decisions much faster in Heroes of the Storm than you do League, but the decisions in Heroes of the Storm are a little bit easier to make.
Right.
Because League, rotations and which objective to take and all that stuff is critical, and you have to do it at the exact right moment. I feel like Heroes of the Storm, if you missed one objective or something, it wasn't the end of the world, but at the same time, Heroes of the Storm snowballed much faster than League of Legends did. I think out of playing all week, the only time we only came back from behind once. Every other game where the other team got ahead, and maybe that's just because we're bad, but
I didn't see it very much either. It seemed like once that domino started to tip, it was kind of on its way down.
So in League, I mean, you've got a few chances to kind of save yourself. There's even last ditch, crazy Baron steals or whatever that'll swing the game for you. But I felt like that wasn't really a thing in Heroes of the Storm. Even if you got like a boss or something, the other team was so far ahead, they could kill the boss without even worrying about your team because you're so behind.
Yeah.
And that's probably partially due to the faster matches too, which I really liked. I thought that was awesome. 20 minutes and done. That was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. If you do the objectives enough, in the end, the objectives will make you win the game. Because the objectives, if you win an objective, it usually targets the other team and the other team's structures. So if you do that long enough, it will start to attack that core, which will, end the game. Which I thought was really, really cool. It keeps the matches short, and you can make them even shorter by, playing really well and stuff.
One thing that I really appreciated was just how simple it was for the character, like just to use a character in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing that League of Legends and Dota tried to remedy it with like the built-in game guides, I guess. Where Dota has a feature like when you select your character, you can actually open up a game guide like within the client. And as you're playing the game, you pick somebody's almost like build for the character, and it'll kind of highlight what moves you need to use and what items suggest for you to buy, which is all well and good. But again, it's a lot to sink in. You have hundreds upon hundreds of ability combinations, not to mention the items and like the scaling items and the prerequisite items to craft a new item. So I mean, it can get very daunting very quickly, especially for a new player with. Heroes of the Storm, there's no items, there's no artifacts. The characters, every level you only have like from 2 to 3 talents to pick from.
No, that's not true. You've got like 5 or 6, but that's only after you've leveled up your account.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's you don't have as many talents to pick from each level. Like when you go from level, like level 2, 5, 6, like whenever you're given the option to upgrade a talent, you don't have like a whole page worth to look through.
And you don't have to worry about what 2 talents will build into a 3rd talent later on or anything like that.
You do, but the penalty for getting it wrong isn't as bad.
Yeah, Heroes of the Storm sort of allows you to build the character to fit your playstyle instead of building the character to, min-max everything.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, which I thought that left you with a lot of creative freedom because you could just choose what would be the best for you at that particular moment, which I thought was great. That worked well.
I think it's a skill too, knowing what to take.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really liked, no items, because I always thought those were an unnecessary complication. I didn't really see the reason why it was in League of Legends, because there's obviously a best build for every character in that game. So you have to pick specific items, which I thought was I didn't like that.
Well, there's a best build for each situation. So, I mean, I guess in Heroes of the Storm where you're selecting skills for the situation is a simplified version of League's building the correct items for the situation. But there is an optimal build for the correct items for that situation for every character. So, I mean, like you said, I agree with you. What I've said before that I stopped playing League of Legends because I felt like it was getting to be homework. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when they introduced a new season, and they introduced a ton of new jungle items, and it was the items that did it. I was like, man, I don't want to go and learn what all these do.
Right.
Like, it's not worth it to me. So, and that's ultimately, it was the items that made me stop playing.
Yeah.
Well, it's great because actually Blizzard did try adding, I guess it was called the artifact system, which was somewhere like halfway between items and the runes from League of Legends. And it's awesome because like after having him for a few weeks, the community like collectively said, no, we don't want this. This is needless complication, unbalancing, like this isn't fun anymore. And they took a look at the community feedback and they just immediately removed it.
And you can kind of tell that they wanted something a little bit more, though, because you can still pick those talents and then it just bolts on that second ability bar above your regular one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad way to handle it necessarily. It lets you have more things that can happen without being too sort of finicky about it.
Yep. What do you think of the balance in between characters?
Seemed okay.
At first I thought, I remember telling you guys this on Skype. I was like, "Oh, some of these characters are overpowered." blah blah blah. But then I like got used to the game and how it ran. I felt like the balance was pretty good.
Yeah,
I think there's definitely certain characters that, as a team levels up, they kind of become more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
Nova is case in point.
Oh God, Nova.
Jeez.
It's Nova, Zeratul, and Vala. Those 3 spin out of fucking control.
Yeah. That was who I first played Vala, and I was like, oh cool, it's Vayne in Heroes of the Storm, and I just it went well my first few games, and then I had to play somebody else that I wasn't familiar with that kind of play style. And
Vala is my main. I love Vala. I think she's really, really cool.
Yeah, she's good. I liked after Vala, I did Diablo.
Diablo's fun. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, Sam had a lot of fun with that one in a couple of games that we played.
He's just a CC machine after a while if you pick
It's great how you can move people around. And that was one thing I thought was so cool about Heroes of the Storm versus something else, is that the characters take up more space. So you can stand in the way of somebody and stop them from getting somewhere. And I don't remember being able to do that in League. And so you take that on top of the fact that Diablo can just throw people around, and he's a lot of fun to play. I grabbed a guy and threw him over the gate one time, and he couldn't get out because it was our towers just wrecked him. It was awesome.
It's like, I don't know, I felt with playing him, I felt like Cho'Gath in League was the only character who you could really do that body block and stuff with.
Oh yeah, he's pretty big too. Yeah,
when he gets, when he maxes his feast stacks,
and almost everybody can do it. It's the little things like that I think are really cool. Like the no last hit stuff is really neat because it encourages you to focus on the other player, and there's a lot more player interaction that comes with that.
Yeah, you don't have to fight against your own team.
Right. I love the team experience. Is another great one.
Yeah. It definitely takes away the responsibility of one person to carry.
Yeah.
And the decisions are good too. A lot of the objectives present really interesting decisions, like do I attack their thing or do I defend my thing? And like both are equally good, but you got to pick the right one. And the one with the Dragon Knight I think is great because you have to claim those shrines, but at the same time, everybody wants to be the guy who becomes the Dragon Knight.
Yeah.
So you're almost fighting your own team on that one.
Yeah, I really like that they have a ton of different maps too with different objectives, and I don't know anything about if there is even a competitive scene, with Heroes of the Storm.
Yes, there is.
Is there? Okay. I like that there's all these different maps because it's rather than League where it's just Summoner's Rift over and over, you're going to have a variation like you do in Counter-Strike where it's some teams are really good at this map and some teams are really good at that map, and that plays a part in the whole competitive arena.
I can see that. Speaking about the competitive thing, I don't know if you guys felt this, but I felt sort of a drop-off in this game. Like, when I was first coming to it and everything was chaos and it was just wacky out of control, that's when I had the most fun. And then as that waveform started to collapse and everybody started getting better and people were making less mistakes and it became still exciting, but in some way less because everything wasn't as confusing and wacky and over the top. Did you guys feel anything like that?
No, not at all. Because killing in this game is very, very satisfying. Extremely satisfying even. And the better you get, the easier, quote unquote, it gets to kill people and the more satisfying you feel.
Yeah, it seemed like people were more conservative though as we got better. Like at this level, nobody's ever going to come close enough for the gate for me to throw them over.
I don't know. I think that the game is so chaotic in that it's pretty much it's like a constant team fight. And I think it's chaotic enough that kind of wacky stuff still happens where you don't, something's going to happen that you don't expect every game. But at the same time, it's got enough structure that you do kind of know what to expect.
Because that first charge for me was so hard that I felt it once it wore off.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, everybody's like paying attention now, and like nothing. It was crazy, but you're right. Those moments do still happen. They just get spaced out a bit, and I think the game probably changes at that point and becomes, getting better under those conditions than it is just absolute chaos.
Yeah. What I liked about I like playing with Jaina, right? And she has the blizzard thing, and I think that is one of the coolest moves in the game because at a certain point you can upgrade the radius. And you can upgrade how far ahead you can cast it. So it's absolutely fantastic to fight with some tank or some healer, and he's starting to run away because he's losing, and then you cast the blizzard thing, and then the last wave hits him and it kills him, and that feels so good. It feels really good.
I like with Vala when the last bolt flies out and kills him, and they're like in fog of war, and you get him.
Oh yeah, that's really good. Plus, kills count even if you died. So if you help fighting one of the players on the opposing team and you die in the fight, you still get the credit if somebody else kills him. I thought that was great. That's good.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that really bugged me about the game was I felt like the controls weren't quite as tight as League of Legends. But I think that'll come with time, updates and stuff.
It could have something to do with everything being a little chunkier too.
Yeah, there was just something about it wasn't quite as polished, but I don't think that took away really from the experience. I just got used to it and had a really great time.
A big draw for me was the Blizzard characters because I love Blizzard games, and I can fight. I can let Arthas fight Diablo and Vala in this game, and it's great. It just makes me giddy. It makes me giddy.
Like Super Smash Brothers, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you just get all these characters. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a lot of fun. That was a really good pick, man. That was well picked.
Great game.
So let's see. Moving on to the next week. We already did the random selection before the show, and I'm going to pass this one on to Ryan. Ryan, what game are we playing this week?
Well, after a lot of deliberation in my head about Counter-Strike, or between Counter-Strike and Rocket League in the last 10 seconds, I think we're going to play Rocket League.
All right, then. I'm going to buy that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a new game, exciting game, and I'm pumped about it. It's going to be a good old time.
Car soccer. Yeah, I've been playing it a little this week, so it'd be good to play it this week, too. I don't mind. Don't mind a bit. All right, so listeners out there, if you want to play Rocket League along with us, if you want to email your thoughts or questions, anything, send it to selectcharacters@gmail.com, and we will play together.
And we've got a Steam group now.
Yes, we do.
So if you want to play games with us, just join that. Find the link in the description, probably, because I can't remember it off the top of my head.
And that concludes episode 12 of the Select Characters podcast. As always, thank you very, very much for listening. And you can find us online. We have a Steam Curator page. We got Facebook, Twitter. We're all over that place. So hit us up. And if you want to send an email, if you want to suggest a topic, if you have a question, send it to selectcharacters@gmail.com or ask.fm/selectcharacters. We'd love to hear from you, so stay in touch. And we'll see you next week.